LEO6s, welcome back. Time for your English session. So let's start with our starter. Now, these are always fiddly. They're just tricky, and particularly in the stress of a sort of exam situation, your head plays tricks on you. It makes it feel more complicated than it really is. Because in reality, we know what nouns are, we know what verbs are. So being able to use a word as a noun or a verb should be reasonably easy in theory. So what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to have a go at completing this question. All it is asking you to do, nice and simple, it asks you to use the word watch as a noun in a sentence. Remember, the whole sentence has to be punctuated perfectly, otherwise you won't get the mark. Even if you've used watch as a noun, if your sentence isn't punctuated properly, you don't get the mark. And then it wants you to use watch as a verb. So you need to think, what is a noun? What is a verb? How do I use watch in two different ways to have two different meanings? One as a verb, one as a noun. So have a think about that. Write out your sentences, then replay the video, and I'll show you two sentences you could have used and explain to you the ways in which you needed to use that word watch. Speak to you in a second. Okay, so as a noun first then. A noun, as you know, is when we are naming a thing, an object, a person, although if it's a person, it's a proper noun. We have lots of different types of noun, abstract, concrete, etc. But we just need to use watch as a noun. So an example might be something like, if I need to check the time, I check my watch. It doesn't need to be as complicated as that. You could have just put, I wear a watch. Simple. You know, if it's got the word a or me or my or their before it, it's going to be a noun because it's something they own, something that belongs to them, which means it's going to be an object. As a verb, remember, are those doing words, is what we used to call them when we were back in Key Stage 1. Doing words, things when something is happening, an action. In this case, I'm going to watch the football match later. If it's something somebody is actively doing, it is a verb. Both the same word, both starting with a capital letter and being punctuated with a full stop at the end. That would be 1 mark. So see how you got on. Have you used it as a verb and as a noun? Is it something that you can have, touch and feel and wear? In this case, a watch. And then is it something you're doing? Watching. But obviously don't put the suffix on the end. It has to be just the word watch. So it needs to be done in the right tense as well. Okay. Yesterday, we looked at describing setting, and we looked at the 5 senses: sight, sound, smell, taste and touch. We looked at writing a description using expanded noun phrases, radiant white light, and relative clauses, which were covered in a verdant emerald moss. And we looked at trying to do that for all of the different sentences. There were some excellent setting descriptions being written. I really, really enjoyed reading those. I have to admit, there are some of you out there who I think this has a real chance of being the best piece of writing you've ever done. Not wanting to put pressure on you, I've said it to some of you as well, because the work you're producing in the run up to this hot write, some of it is exceptional. So all you should need to do is just cherry pick, take those best bits from each of those bits of work that you've done, combine them together, link them beautifully with some combining sentences, and it should be some of the best writing you've ever done. It should be hitting so many targets. There's a really good chance that some of you will be producing greater depth pieces of writing, I think, this time. So that's what we looked at yesterday, describing setting. And that links us really nicely into what we're doing today. And today we are developing and describing character. So as well as developing a strong setting, it is crucial that we develop a really strong character, or characters, plural, in our writing. In this case, we're trying to develop the characters of Elliot, Virgo, and Thanatos, I suppose, to a certain extent. Because in your writing, you're going to be essentially rewriting chapter 7 in your own style. Having it change, you can have different things happen, but that is what you're going to be doing. So what I will be looking for today is that, again, and I know it's twice in a row now, but it's a narrative. It's going to be descriptive. So we're going to use expanded noun phrases. They are going to come up, and you should be masters of these by now. So I'm going to be looking that you're using those. I'm going to be seeing, hopefully, that you're integrating dialogue. Again, something we didn't do that long ago. 2 days ago, I think it was, that we did this. Tuesday it would have been. So really, we should be pretty strong with integrating dialogue now. And then also using that show, not tell technique. And again, we've covered that too. There's nothing new here. And that happens in year 6. It gets to the point where there's nothing new. It's about consolidating. You just need to show us that you're mastering it now, that you can do it really well. And hopefully you need less and less support doing it. So what does that look like then? Well, we've got 2 characters. We've got Elliot here, and we'll look at him first. So we need to think, when we are doing our narrative, we must build those characters up. We've got to let the person reading know who this person is, what they're all about, how they're feeling, what their sort of character is like. And we must make them believable. We've looked already at how we integrate that dialogue. We've talked about having the narrator breaking it up. We've talked about all of the rules for direct speech, and we're just going to try and bring that in today. But to do that, we need to have a really clear think about the character of Elliot. What do we know about him already? So I would say at the moment, we know a few things about Elliot. We could attach some adjectives to Elliot without too much trouble. I think we can easily say that he's quite caring. I think that's an adjective that would describe Elliot. We know that because of the way he looks after his mum. He goes home immediately, straight away he goes looking for her, he's worried about her, he takes care of her, he's managing to somehow pay, well, not quite pay all the bills actually, but he's managing to keep them going just. So he's a very caring character. We know too that he's quite curious. He's inquisitive. He wants to know more and more about Virgo. That sort of spiked his curiosity. I'm going to do one more, then I'm going to make you pause the video so you can add on more of your own before I show you the rest of mine. I think we can also say that Elliot is very focused. We know that because he is somehow managing. I know he's getting into some trouble at school, but he's going to school every day whilst also then doing all the shopping, doing all the cleaning, doing all the cooking, looking after his mum. He must be a really focused individual. We also know he's focused because he is determined. Anytime we see him doing anything, he is determined to make sure that it goes really well. When he's questioning Virgo at first, he's really focused on getting the answers out of her. He's also focused on getting her to the police station so that she's out of their hair. So pause the video here. What other adjectives could you marry up with Elliot? What other adjectives best describe the character of Elliot in your opinion? When you've done that, start the video again and I'll show you the last couple that I've put on when I was thinking about Elliot. And we'll see how much overlap there is. See if you've got some of the words that I thought of. Speak to you in a second. Okay, the other words I put were disbelieving. He's very, very sort of disbelieving of Virgo to begin with. He can't, even after her stunt in the river, when she was really showing off how much truth there is in her claim that she's immortal, you get the impression there's still a part of Elliot that is struggling to believe it, as there would be for all of us. And I also then put loyal. Now, we've not seen his loyalty to Virgo yet. Well, that's not quite true. We have actually. Towards the end of chapter 7, he shows his loyalty to Virgo, but he's incredibly loyal to his mum, and he's putting a lot at risk to try and keep her illness hidden so that he's not taken away from her because of his loyalty and his love for his mum. We are starting to see that coming through with Virgo now as well, that when he realizes that Thanatos is not a good person, not a good character, not a good god, not someone to be trusted, that's when we start seeing it come through. So what 5 did you get, or what, however many more, you might have put more than that, but did you have any that were the same as mine? Let's go now to looking at the character of Virgo. I'm not going to show you any of the ones I've put on for Virgo, but the first task I'd like you to do, please, is I'd like you can just write Virgo. You don't need to draw her. You can if you want to, but you don't need to. I'd like you to have adjectives coming off all around the word Virgo to describe the character of Virgo in your opinion. Remember, there's no right, there's no wrong. So it's your view of what type of character you think Virgo is. Pause the video here and do that. I want you to come up with at least, let's say at least 5 like I had for Elliot, but you can do as many more as you'd like. Adjectives to describe Virgo. When you've done that, play the video again and I'll speak to you then. Speak to you in a second. Okay, so which adjectives did I go for? I went for rebellious. We can see that from her chapter in chapter 3, where she is being sort of fighting against the rest of the Zodiac Council. She doesn't want to just sit and do boring office work and be in charge of the stationery cupboard. She wants to get out and do things, see Earth, explore it, do all of that. But the others aren't so bothered. So she sort of takes it upon herself to go off and do it. Definitely a bit of a rebel. I've put that she's intelligent. She's clearly very, very smart. She manages to learn how to rewire all of the electricity from Elliot's neighbour's house, Mrs. Horse's bum, all the way to Elliot's house. And she does that overnight. She does that in one night. She reads all about it and does all that. So she's clearly a very intelligent character. However, with that intelligence, she's also very naive. That's a word which means sort of when you're easily taken advantage of, when you're not sort of very... difficult to explain naive. When you're not quite switched on, you're not very street savvy, you can be easily manipulated. She doesn't know about the real world. She knows about Elysium, where she lives with the other Zodiac Council members. She doesn't know anything about Earth, though, as we can see when she's walking through the fields and she thinks that cowpats might be a local delicacy. So she's quite a naive character. She's out of her depth. There's no doubt about that. She starts realizing that when they end up getting trapped under Stonehenge with Prisoner 42, with Thanatos. She's not ready for all this. She's too young, she's too inexperienced, she's out of her depth, definitely. I've put that she's starting to be worried. She's increasingly worried in this chapter that she might get in trouble, that the prisoner might escape, that she doesn't know what she's doing. And finally, my sixth one, she's very argumentative. Her and Elliot have already had several arguments and we're only on chapter 7. So very argumentative character. So what we need to do is we need to be able to use all of these characteristics, all of these adjectives, in order to get that idea across to our reader. And to do that, we need to be doing those 3 things on the wolf. We need to be using those expanded noun phrases to really describe the character. We need to be integrating that dialogue. So through the dialogue and the way the characters speak, we can see what they're like. If we have a piece of dialogue that then ends with Virgo said stroppily, we know she's quite a grumpy character, or at that point she's being quite grumpy. So we need to integrate it in our dialogue. We also need to use that show not tell technique. That's when we show how somebody is feeling, not just tell the reader. That's the inference. That's where our knowledge of inference from our reading gets woven back into our writing. Good readers are good writers. Good writers are good readers. There's no sort of surprise there. So I've done some modelling of what that should look like. So here's a first paragraph that we could have. I'm just going to put my face over Virgo for a second. There we go. Look, I look like I'm a member of the Zodiac Council. So if you read there, you can see that in green, we've got the expanded noun phrases. That's sort of your first part of your wolf. And that's what challenge 1, the green challenge for today, will be. To do your descriptions of the characters with expanded noun phrases. Dark, damp passageway. 2 adjectives connected with a comma and attached to a noun to describe it. Styled blonde hair. 2 examples of expanded noun phrases. We've also got challenge 3 there. Now, if someone feels the hairs on the back of their arm begin to stand on end, that means they're scared. So I'm not saying Elliot was scared. Boring. We're done. We're past that. We're year 6. We're moving into year 7 soon. We are done with just simply saying someone was scared, someone was happy. We can do much better. So we show how they're feeling, and that hairs standing up is a classic way of showing somebody being scared. So that is an example of the sort of 3rd level of challenge, the 3rd part of the wolf, being showing our reader, not telling our reader how characters feel. The second part of the wolf, challenge 2, the orange challenge, was to integrate some dialogue, and I've done that there. Are we sure there's not another way out? Virgo whispered to Elliot. It's just, I'm not sure I like the idea of going any closer to those sounds. So there we can see the integration of dialogue with the inverted commas for speech, with commas inside if the speech isn't finished, full stops on the outside if the whole sentence is finished, full stop on the inside if the speech is finished but the sentence continues. And then all three being used in that paragraph. Grim, ominous glow is an example of an expanded noun phrase. Elliot took a deep breath before replying might show another idea of nerves or sort of fear. And then the direct speech just there in orange. They are your three different challenges today. And what I'm going to be looking for is that you are then using those techniques to help develop the characters. You can do it as like I just did, where you write a bit of a scene from your hot write. So it's done then. If you've got that, you've got a scene, you've got a paragraph, you've got a section of your hot write already done. Or you can just do it as a standalone paragraph where you're describing the characters. Whatever you choose to do though, if you're doing the green challenge, it needs to include expanded noun phrases. If you're doing the orange challenge, it needs to include the green challenge and then dialogue to develop the character. And if you're doing the red challenge, it needs to include all of the green stuff, all of the orange stuff, and it then needs to use that show not tell technique. If you've done that, you should have a really nice lump of your hot write already done because you've got all this good stuff. This is what I mean. This is why I'm confident that this hot write could be one of the best you've ever done, because it's already looking like that. The pieces of work you're sending in to me are already superb. So if we keep it up, you're just taking superb bits and putting them together to make one superb whole piece of writing. Can't wait. I really can't wait to read them. And because it's then half term, I get a nice lump of time where I don't have to read them all in one go and get a horrible headache because I'm reading them off the screen. I can read a couple a day, really get my teeth into them. So that's your task for today. I'll be back with you tomorrow for your big read and your English, the last ones of this week. So I will speak to you then. But for now, goodbye.